Okay. Thank you for gathering, everyone. Today is a significant event in the Yiaps family household, and it's also significant that all the next generation are here. The grandchildren of grandma, and for me and my siblings, all our children, nephews and nieces. And I'm pretty sure that none of them have heard the story of us migrating to Australia 40 years ago. It was on the 5th of November 1971. And I'll just speak from my experience. At that point in time, I just turned 14 years of age. I'd finished Form 3 in Malaysia, which was called LCE, which is a low certificate of education. And when we migrated to Australia, it was a big decision for the family. And basically, 2 years ago, there was something in Malaysia called the May 1969 riots. And these were pretty bad. And I remember as a 12-year-old living through this time, which was probably one of the most scariest experiences one could undergo. When there's rioting in the city, there's fighting, people being killed, houses, cars burnt, and then the whole city under curfew for about nearly 3 weeks, whereby the population was ordered to go indoors and ordered not to come out. And if you did venture outside, you'd be shot on sight, because the army were positioned all over rooftops, and they were just, their orders were to shoot anyone they see on the street on sight. And so it's a pretty scary time, because the entire population in the city didn't know how long it was going to last. It was one of these ongoing things with the race riots. Fortunately, Dad at that time had a lot of contacts, so he was able to get his army friends to go and get provisions and go to Mum's parents in another part of KL and give them some food. And Dad was hunting at that time, and he had a shotgun. So there were about 400 rounds of ammunition sitting on the living room table, and we took shifts to sleep so that there's someone awake all the time in case someone came through the front door. Anyway, back to migrating to Australia. It was, I think it was a Saturday night, if I'm not mistaken, on the 5th of November 1971. We had to fly to Singapore and catch a jumbo jet from Singapore to Melbourne. And it was really exciting, flying on the jumbo. The jumbo had only just come into service, and this huge, massive aeroplane, bigger than anything else anybody had ever seen. And inside the cabin, there were 9 seats across. And so for me at that age of 14, it was really exciting. We dressed up, we had our little suits and so on, and got some warm clothes, because when we arrived in Melbourne, it was pouring with rain and it was bitterly cold even in November. So I remember getting out and feeling freezing even with our coats. And we went to a place called Crossley Lodge in the city, down one of the lanes. Crossley Lane, Crossley Lodge, and we stayed there overnight before we were going to our first house in Burke Street. So we lived in Burke Road, Camberwell, for about 6 months. And all of us went to, did we all go to Camberwell High School? No, you guys didn't. No.
Primary school.
Don and I went to Camberwell High School. The girls went to primary school, local primary school, before they ended up going to Methodist Ladies College. They'll talk about that further down the track. But going from Malaysia to Australia was a big cultural shift and change. At the age of 14, I really enjoyed it. I found it an exciting adventure for me. Year 10, which was Form 4 in Camberwell High School, was a real fun year. We didn't learn anything new. So I had a good time, never studied, never did any homework, and finished all the homework in class. Whenever there were tests, I ended up getting 100% because it was all so easy. However, life in school was interesting because I experienced gangs. So in the high school, there was a couple of gangs. And then I never knew that something like guys and girls shagging in the park behind the bushes was something that happened in school. Also, the gangs were involved with drugs as well. So that was a real novelty, coming to grips with that in school. I still remember getting picked on once on the tram on the way back. And fortunately, nothing happened because I stood my ground and didn't weaken. And I'm not sure whether Uncle Don's going to fess up that he got into a fight when he was in school, but we'll see what he says. Anyway, we stayed in this place in Burke Road, Camberwell, for 6 months. Then we moved to our own place in East Malvern. And that was only a small house, 3-bedroom, 1 bathroom, and there were 6 of us. So we made do over that period in time. And I had to suffer sharing the same bedroom with Uncle Don over all that period in time. Needless to say, it was an interesting, challenging experience. Well, school was fine, and then going into Melbourne Uni after that was a complete change. Then getting my license was real exciting. When we first moved into Australia, adapting to the culture was actually quite easy because we spoke English. That made all the difference. And so being English educated over in Malaysia and speaking really good English and actually having better English than the Aussies, the moment I opened my mouth to speak, I actually got some respect, which was really good. So the first year I got myself a paper round around Burke Road in Camberwell. And then I kept up that paper round as well. Once we moved to East Malvern, I used to ride from East Malvern to Camberwell to go deliver the papers. And it took me 6 months to save up for a bicycle, which was my pride and joy. So I researched all the bicycles and got the latest gear and everything else. And I really felt ripped off when Uncle Don squealed and Mum and Dad bought him one exactly like mine. And he did nothing for it. That was a real rip-off. I was so cheesed off. And I went, life is not fair. So then after working in the newsagent for a while, when I was in year 11, I got a job in the camera store just up the road. And so being a bit of a camera buff, I thought, you know, heaven had turned up in terms of work. So I absolutely loved working in the camera shop, learning all about the latest cameras and serving clients and looking at stock and everything else, etc. So that went on for a couple of years, got into a really good relationship with the owner of the business. And he taught me a lot about photography and cameras, and I got to play with some really, really cool, expensive gear as well. Then after we moved from Burke Road to East Malvern, I got myself a job around the corner, you know, in the petrol station for about 5 years. So within a short time, I was running the place for the owner. So I would do all his books, and on the weekend, you know, I would, you know, on the weekday, I would ride to the bank with $10,000 cash on my bicycle. Grandma got pretty worried about me doing that. But, you know, nobody ever would think that a kid riding a bicycle would be carrying so much cash. So I used to go and bank all his money and run the whole place for him, which was interesting. And I even got Uncle Don a job there, you know, pumping petrol. But unfortunately, he only lasted 3 months because he couldn't hack the work. It was too dirty for him. And then I tried to teach him how to change a tire, and that was an utter disaster in terms of he couldn't be bothered. Like he didn't have enough strength to lever the tire off the rim. So it was pretty pathetic at the time, and he didn't last for very long. But it was good experience anyway. Then what happened? So I worked at the petrol station there right through uni days. And then after uni, I got a job in Repco Research for a year, and then got another job, moved to Sydney for 3.5 years. So that was a really great experience. And in summing up the time in Australia, for me, in reflecting upon 14 years growing up in Malaysia, where life was very, very different, and coming to Australia and finish up my growing up, I was able to bring together the best of the East and the West. So I was able to hold on to the values I learned growing up as a teenager in Malaysia, and also then embrace the values here. So I feel very privileged and grateful for the opportunity to grow up in Malaysia and grow up here in Australia to give me the different perspective of both worlds. And I can tell you something funny as well, you know, in terms of growing up, you know, Debbie was in primary school, and when she was in year 6, she had a pretty tough reputation. So I remember her coming home one day with blood on her fingernails, and what she'd done was beat up and claw the bully in school with a cricket bat.
What?
And you know, she actually drew quite a bit of blood as well. So that was pretty funny.
Top
so there's lots of different stories like that, and And I said to Uncle Don I'd be kind to him, so I won't tell you all the gory stories and funny stories that involved him when we were growing up. And if any one of you kids want to know, come and talk to me quietly, I'll whisper in your ear. So I want to say thanks to Grandpa and Grandma for the sacrifice that they brought us over here. It wasn't easy because we came over here with very little and we had to make a life. And initially the first few months it was like hand to mouth. And so getting a job for me, being able to have my own money, pay for my own things and be independent very quickly was really good. And so it's been great living in this country. It is a great country and being here 40 years. And Melbourne is a great city. And however, I prefer to live in Perth now because I like the beaches there. And I look forward to watching all of you, all of the younger generation grow up in this country and see how they can make a difference to the world and find their place in society. Thank you very much.
It's been a long time, and my memory's a little bit blurred about all that. But from what I can recall, it was a new experience coming here, and initially, as an 11-year-old, you just take things in your stride and you don't worry too much about things. And I just saw it as a new adventure. But initially we went to school, and like Richard said, it was a new experience, and the people there, all the kids, initially they're actually very friendly. I can still remember my brother and I sitting on the bench, and a bunch of kids just came up and started talking to us. I was really quite surprised at how friendly the Australian people were. And they just took us in, and that made it really easy for us to assimilate. And as far as school was concerned, I really felt that felt quite comfortable in mixing in with the kids at school. And I think that made it really easy to blend in. And school was easy, the work was not hard, and we were taught really to study hard as kids. In Malaysia, I think parents drummed it into us, especially Mum's dad. I still remember him saying, study hard, and try to pass it on to my kids, but I'm sure they do the best they can, don't they, Sarah? Nice. So anyway, at school, it was a co-ed school, and it was something new, actually. Malaysian schools were, of course, just boys and girls, and being in a co-ed school was very different. And I still remember one of the experiences with a Japanese exchange student. His name was Mamoru. He was in my year, and he started me on the guitar. And he used to come around to Mum's house and eat noodles. Mum remember that. And he was a very nice guy and very polite, and we got on well. And he started me off, and then I started to join a band, and we played at the school talent quest, and we didn't win. We came second, so that wasn't too bad. And then I took it up, and I used to practice a lot at home, and it was a lot of fun. I drove my brother crazy because we lived in the same room. I must say that all my antiques, stirring my brother up, actually helped him develop a thick skin. That's why now when you talk to him, it goes over his head and he ignores you a lot. And you can say things to him and he just comes back and does the same thing. He's so thick-skinned. And I guess that was my doing. In teenage years, well, we did a lot of things. We did the line dancing with the Chinese Youth Association, and we also did Tang Sudo. Of course, Debbie's the one who's been there the longest and still carrying it on. And that was a lot of fun. And the martial arts that we learned came into handy. I used to go to school and tell them I knew how to do martial arts, and even though I was a little guy, yeah, people would get scared of me. It was really funny. Funny as. So that was that. And I always remembered that it was important to remember the gratitude that I had to my parents for coming over at the time and giving me opportunity. And I did my best to study hard so that I could make something of my career and make my parents proud of me. And I'm fortunate enough to say that I managed to achieve all that and became a doctor and made Mum proud. And Dad too, of course, because Dad always wanted me to be a dentist, but when Richard got in, I saw no point in having 3 dentists in the family, so I opted for medicine instead. And then Richard dropped out, of course, and that was the end of that. And I think the important things that, on reflecting, as far as assimilating to the society is concerned, adaptability was really important. And looking back on it, I think we adapted pretty well to Australian culture. And one of the other things was I also had an attitude of never giving up. And this was reflected really in the times that I used to play football. I actually joined a local club playing football. And being the size that I was, and compared to Australian kids, they put me in a position initially as a rover. So a rover was a guy who would run around after the ball. And didn't do too well there, so they moved me to the forward pocket. And having a grateful heart is also important, that you recognize the people who have been important in your lives and make sure that you thank them for it. And I think if you have these attitudes, especially for the young people, you will do very well. And I wish you all the best and blessings to all of you. So I think that's about sums up my experiences in short.
That's all right, that's all right. So I was 10 when we came, and when Mum and Dad told us we were coming, I just remember all of us being really, really, really excited. And, it was just a big adventure. So there's no hesitation about leaving Malaysia because of all the problems with the racial riots. And also knowing that none of us really would likely end up at university in Malaysia, and Dad would have to be working 24/7 to finance any overseas education. And, with 4 kids, that was a big, big ask. So anyway, it was going to be great fun. And part of the whole thing about coming, remember Mum and Dad wanting us to become cultured? And so they took us to the Merlin Hotel. Do you remember that? Yeah. We went to that concert. And there's this 3 Eurasian American girls singing, and we all got dressed up, and we had to use the fork and the knife all properly and sit properly, and we had our long white socks on, and you boys had suits. And so we're having a taste of Western culture at the Merlin Hotel. So things like that, it was fun. And then Deanna and I, Grandma took us to the tailor to make all these thick clothes with the crimpling. so daggy now, but at the time, it's the height of fashion.
I don't think Lani and Savannah would be seen dead now.
No. And, hang on. Then we went to came over here, as Doc said, in the big jumbo. That was exciting. And we were met by the Kaws and the Koos, who have become lifelong friends. And they were colleagues of Mum and also grew up with Dad, so they'd been here for a year. And they really looked after us. They picked the schools for us and picked Campbell High for the boys because that was a good school with a good reputation. Campbell South was close by, so the unit was booked, and so we settled very quickly. And we used to spend weekends with those families as well. And then as the years went on, other families that came, Mum and Dad's friends, then we would befriend them and go out with them and do family functions. So it's a good life, good busy life. That 3-bedroom unit's still there in Burke Road. Yeah, the big hedge is gone though, so they've just got a fence up. So school was good. Deanna and I were the only Asians, and yes, that's true about the blood and the boy that I scratched. But it wasn't unprovoked violence, kids, right? What happened was that they ran off. See, I took Grandpa's cricket bat. Grandpa was a cricketer, and I took Grandpa's cricket bat to school and was playing cricket, and they'd run off with the ball. and then the bat, you know, and so they'd destroy our game. So I just ran off and just got it back, and basically they started hitting me, so I hit them back. And then I thought, okay, got to play dirty then, you know, they weren't stopping, so I just did the down the arms, and then and so it was pretty easy, because when you grew up with two big brothers, you're used to fighting. They're pretty tough. So I got dragged to the headmistress, and the boys were crying, and I had my pigtails. I was so innocent. And I could see my teacher laughing behind the headmistress. The headmistress telling me off, and my teacher is killing herself laughing. So anyway, I didn't get told off too much. When I explained what happened, it was fine. So, but so after that though, the bullies stopped bullying me. I don't know if you got bullied that much. No. So, yeah. No, probably in your class they were good. But after that, that was fine, you know. And then I ended up at MLC, and Deanna came too because of Karen, my friend from primary school, whom I'm still friends with now. And also the boys didn't want us at Campbell High because we could see what they were up to. So they were quite happy for me to go to different school. And school was great. It was fairly, easy and lots of opportunities, especially the sport, which was really wonderful. And so uni was good as well. And also right through really, just with the whole education thing, it was this gratitude to Mum and Dad for bringing us here so that we could study and we could have this good life. And, you know, things would have been so different if we stayed in Malaysia. So, you know, we're always very grateful for their sacrifices because life was hard. Yeah. Okay. So the one thing that was quite different here was that it's not the same in Malaysia where girls were expected, you know, to do the kitchen stuff and all that. Anyway, so when we first came, I remember Mum said, "Oh, you know, you've got to help in the kitchen." I said, "Well, what about the boys?" And Mum said, "They've got homework." "I've got homework too." So I was being a real, you know, feminist in that very young age. But the good thing about here is that you can work when you're young. Like all of us worked during school, and we had money and were financially independent for our holidays and for all the extra things that we had, because we knew it wasn't fair to ask Mum and Dad for money when already, you know, they were already given up so much for us here. And also in Malaysia, you probably couldn't do that, but you can here. And the food in those days, there's no Chinese grocery shops and Chinese restaurants were rare. So Mum used to go down to the Hawthorn Butcher to buy all the groceries. So that's quite different now with the wide variety that we can get now. Things were quite hard then. And then Dad used to catch his fish and go to Taiping and give the owner a fish, and he'd cook up we'd get a fish dish cooked up, and same with Unicorn Garden. So I remember those times, all the big family meals where the restaurateurs also enjoyed Dad's fish. So I just think the life here, we could never have had the good life here if it hadn't been for Mum and Dad, and really Mum pushing Dad to apply to come, so to give us the start in life here and the wonderful opportunities. So for that, I think we're all eternally grateful. Thanks, Mum.
Is it ready? Oh, okay. Yeah, I just remember really being excited about coming because I was about 9, and just a few things. I remember that song, I'm living on the jet plane, and I don't know when I'll be back again. And I used to play all the time when we were, that time when we're coming. So, and yeah, but I think being that young, I don't know how aware I was about all the financial difficulties and things, but I remember about the chocolate in Burke Road. Mum would say, just wait until Dad's pay or something before we could, and Mum rationed us a bit. But once Mum and Dad got work, I think we had heaps of chocolate, you know, Kit Kats all the time, and the milk tasted really different. It wasn't that Bear Brand stuff, or you know, the powder stuff. So that's what I remember too. And primary school used to get little bottles of milk, full cream milk, and for free. And my friends and I would have drinking competitions to see how fast we could drink it, and we get hiccups. And I remember the milk bar near the school too. You could get pies and 2 cents worth of lollies and all that kind of stuff, which was so different to noodles, you know, in the Malaysian canteen, yeah. And also, like, I remember just a bit about school in Malaysia, like, we'd have tests and then they put you in positions according to how well you do in your test. Way back from grade 1, and I left at grade 3, and they did that, and then they made you sit in that order too. So they never did that in Australia, so that was pretty good. And one thing I remember though, the way we spoke was a bit different to the way Australians spoke. And when I was in grade 4, I had a dear old teacher, Mrs. Smith. She had grey hair, beautiful lady. She used to sing things like, lazy bones, basking in the sun, never get a day's work done. But you know, I just came up with, shut up! You know, Malaysians say that all the time. She goes, oh dear, oh, we don't say that, you know. That was really bad to say that. So that was a real, you know, cultural thing, and I thought, wow. So, yeah, I still remember that. And yeah, I still remember just walking to school was really nice, all the smells, because it's different seasons, because in Malaysia it was always hot. You know, the spring, the autumn, kicking the leaves, you know, when you're walking to school you would kick the leaves, and just things like that, and the blossoms in springtime. And yeah, and it was always lovely sharing a room with Deb. Like, we'd talk for ages and we'd listen to music, and I'll copy her everything, and she'll say, can't you get your own friends? Do you have to wear what I wear? But she still loved me. She's always a lovely big sister. And what else?
You go clubbing.
Oh yeah.
You used to go
I don't
clubbing.
think we're going to talk about those.
With me here anyway.
I must
to
admit,
some of those clubbing things.
I must admit I didn't enjoy karate because the guys used to see, oh, girls, and they'd want to bash us up. And so even my shins are like this now, and my elbows. So I gave that up as soon as I could. And what else do I remember? And just doing the old, you know, the McDonald's, working at the McDonald's. Again, I followed Deb. Deb got me a job. she had all the contacts, so that was good. Save for my car, and Docky's helping get cars and things, so thank you. And yeah, just remembering being grateful to Mum and Dad for their sacrifice and how tough it was. I still remember how hard it was for Mum, you know, working and chatty, and how horrible the kids were, and even Mum not having a car those early years, early weeks. I don't know how long it was. And then when Mum finally got that little Toyota, they gave you flowers in the car. I remember that. It was like, oh, this is nice. And what else? And then Mum worked for at South Melbourne with the migrant English girls, and Mum would like treat them like daughters. She'd give them pocket money and do the homework for them, and lend them my book. I think one girl didn't give it back, and I said, oh really, you want to use that book? But yeah, so but Mum enjoyed that a lot better. And Yeah, so they're the main things I remember. And just, when we first came, we used to go out as a family to all their little trips to like going to Mount Eildon on the Lake Eildon, not Mount Eildon, Lake Eildon on the paddle boat, houseboat with Swansea and who else? What's he on too?
Angelina.
Yeah.
Joy.
And then used to go to Yiaps and all sorts of trips. That was quite good.
Lakes entrance, we went quite a bit.
Yeah.
Went fishing there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, until Mum didn't want to clean fish anymore, then we stopped going. Yeah, so that was good times, and but always remembering how much Mum and Dad sacrificed and the gratefulness, and how Mum really was steadfast and just all she was so strong going through everything, and even with Dad's problems and stuff. So thanks, Mum. All credit and honour to you, and to Dad, whatever he could do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
Yeah, I know. I was determined to come to Australia. When Grandpa said that the ambassador suggested to him that we come over here for the children's education. The ambassador to Australia was his patient. So when I heard that, I jumped at the idea, and for one whole year, I sat with him after dinner every night, telling him, when are we going, until he had to give in. After one whole year of persistence, he gave in, because he's got a very successful practice. And to leave that, to come to a new country with nothing, it was really hard. But I knew there was no future for the 4 beautiful children that we have. How can we ever educate them in Malaysia? It's very difficult. The place is riddled with racial discrimination. If you are not a Malay, you get nothing, even though you work very, very hard. So it was with great relief that we came here. But it was through a great deal of hardship that we came. I mean, we came here with very little. I mean, all of you would remember that last year, I gave each one of you a letter, which I wrote with great care about how we came here. I hope you still have got that letter. You better keep it so that your children would know where our roots came from. Okay, it's meant for you to keep and to understand our background. And I'm so glad that we came and we are all integrated into this society so well. And that's a result of, I'm so happy. Today is the happiest day of my life, because I see all of you growing up so well in this country. And when I got a job, my first job was at Chatston High School as an English teacher. I used to be an English teacher in Malaysia. I was teaching the VCE students, and in a boys' school. It was one of the top schools in Malaysia. And the students were so respectful. Everything, they kept very close attention to everything that I say, and they did really well, and they were so grateful for whatever I did for them. But when I came here, the students were of a different caliber. I was teaching Form 1 and Form 2 English. Oh, the trials I had with them, they wouldn't listen. I mean, a comprehension lesson turned into a writing lesson. Everything turned into a writing lesson. And I was loaded with their homework to mark, because I can't simply give them work and not mark them. So I had so much work to do, marking them, because they wouldn't listen. And some of the girls will purposely fall on the floor and lift their skirts up, and they do it purposely, I know, to annoy me. And so I had to ignore it, because the more you pick on them, the more they'll do things to annoy you. And when I walked down the corridor, during interval and recess, a lot of them would stand around and say, yip, 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 because my surname is Yap. And so they would talk like puppies, and they don't open their mouths. So I don't know who it is. So I had to ignore that. And when I do yard duty, it's the same thing. It was such a different cultural shock. It was a real culture shock. From respectful students to these who don't want to study. But to their credit, I must say, the good ones are excellent. There are some students who work so hard, and all I can give them is all the time excellent, full marks, and they do their work so diligently and so well. They're so imaginative, and the way they presented their work was really top class. And so I know every day I used to go home and cry. I dreaded Mondays, because Monday means going to face these naughty students again. But I had no choice. I had to continue till the end of the year because we needed the money. And at the end of the year, I saw an advertisement for migrant English teachers. And so I quickly applied, and it was heaven teaching these migrant girls in a school. The school is closed down now. It's in South Melbourne, at the corner of City Road and Kingsway. I still remember every time I pass by there, I feel quite nostalgic for this place. And there were only 300 girls in this school. And most of the girls, the migrant girls, came from Turkey or Greece. Their parents were working in the fisherman's band in the Holden company there. And I became like a mother confessor to them, because then they'll come and tell me all the troubles they have with their parents, and for them I could understand the culture shock, because their parents were so strict, wouldn't allow them to go out of the house even, no boyfriends, study, all the time study, and no free time. And so they used to come and complain to me, and their favorite phrase is, "Oh, my father will kill me if he knows this happened. He will kill me if I don't pass." All the time they use that expression. So I had to give them a sympathetic ear and try as best as possible to help them. And that was a breeze. It lasted until the school closed down. And that was sometime in the 1980 something. Because the school dwindled to only 80 students, and it wasn't viable for the school to continue. After that, I couldn't bear to go to another school. Then it's like migrating to another country, because the students will test you to the utmost in your first year. Then after that, they'll accept you. But you have to be able to be very tough to stand all the testing that they put you through. So in the end, I told Grandpa, I just can't go and face another new school. And he said, okay, you can stop work and come and work for me as a receptionist in his clinic, in his dental clinic. So that's what I did. And so life became much, much easier then. So then the rest, you will all know, then everyone got married and got children. And so I was so busy looking after all of you. Everyone I had a hand in bringing up, But I love all of you. You've all grown to be such lovely, lovely personalities. Now, coming back to the significance of why we have the 40th anniversary celebration. Now, 40 is a very significant year in the Bible, because the Jews had lived as slaves in Egypt long time ago. And then God sent Moses. If you've heard of Moses, I'm sure all of you have heard of Moses. Moses to go and save these Israelites and lead them out of Egypt into the promised land. Now, when they did that, They could have easily gone to the promised land in 11 days. But they grumbled and complained against God all the time. And so God got angry with them and made them wander in the desert for 40 years. But all that time, God looked after them. Their shoes never wore out, And during that time, nobody got sick. A few millions of them, they never got sick. And God supplied food for them, even in the desert. You've heard of manna, isn't it? So every day He would provide manna for them to eat. And then when they complained again, they wanted meat, He used to send them fowls. They'll come flying down, and they could have fresh meat every day. And so that's why it took them 40 years to get out of the desert into the promised land. And so we have been traveling too like that for 40 years. But we didn't suffer that much compared to the Israelites or the Jews in those days. So we have a relatively easy time here because I believe God looked after us. And now I want to speak blessings on all of you because I believe words have incredible power. And I want these blessings that I speak over you to flow on to you, to your descendants, to 1,000 generations. So that when I speak blessings to you, these blessings will keep on flowing on from generation to generation because I'm the new generation here. And so I'm passing on these blessings to all of you. And I believe God has led us to come to this. Australia is called Southland of the Holy Spirit. Although at the beginning, we walked through the valley of the shadow of death, but God with us, comforting us. His goodness and mercy followed us all the days of our lives. And He planted us here like trees by the rivers of water. And these trees bring forth fruit in its season. And the leaves shall not wither, and whatever we do shall prosper. And that is my blessing on all of you, that whatever you do will prosper. And God is pleased when we are united in our family relationship. And that's why we always have gathering, showing love towards one another, have plenty of enjoyment and feasting and food. And now I pronounce these blessings on all of you. We are blessed in our home and workplace and everywhere we go. We are blessed when we pay our bills and when we make bank deposits. We are blessed in our relationships, blessed in our health and strength. We are blessed with wisdom, insight, and knowledge. Everything that we put our hands to do is going to prosper and succeed. So I believe that we live in the blessing zone, and under God's kingdom, we will all prosper now and in the coming future years. Okay?